It's a Monday Night Football Super Bowl rematch. We'll cover all aspects of Eagles-Chiefs with Hall of Famer Ray Didinger and the Inquirer's Mike Sielski. Sean Green checks in to tell us whether Big Blue will lose by 40 this week. And Justin Bruni on some long overdue fantasy breakouts. That's all right now on an action-packed edition of This Week in Pro Football.
It's time for This Week in Pro Football. A deep dive into the key issues and marquee matchups in the National Football League. For the next 60 minutes, we invite you to sit back or lean in with host Pat Callahan as we preview the week's Eagles matchup, big games, breaking stories, and all news NFL. It's This Week in Pro Football, right now on JAKIB Media Sports.
Welcome to a Week 11 edition of This Week in Pro Football. Pat Callahan joining you, presented by Kennedy Ford. Xander Krause, of course, my producer. It's great to have all of you here on JAKIB Sports YouTube channel. And we look forward to entertaining you for the next 80 minutes or so as we preview week number 11 in the National Football League. Lots to talk about here. I'm excited about tonight's roster. Ray Didinger, Hall of Famer, joining me. South Pal's traveling the next couple weeks. Ray's coming up in about 15 minutes or so. Be joining me. We'll talk about the Eagles, Chiefs, and look around the NFL. We'll talk a little Andy Reid. And then, of course, we got the usual suspects, Sean Green, Justin Bruni. And then at the top of the next hour, Mike Sielski, the Philadelphia Inquirer columnist, will join. We talk about Eagle fans and Eagles, Chiefs coming up on Monday night. Big Monday night game. Maybe we get a national game for once. It's crazy. It's crazy what's going on in the NFL. Some really lousy national games. That game in Frankfurt last week between New England and Indianapolis. That set the case of European NFL football back about 20 years. So we'll see if the NFL can recover from that. But some interesting notes from last week. You're probably all aware of it. It's been talked about quite often now that there were 6 games in Week 10 in which a winning field goal was kicked on the last play of the game. That's the most by 2 ever in NFL history. So it does speak to the magnetism that is NFL football, is that such drama. It doesn't matter if the first 59 minutes are terrible. Let's face it, take, for instance, that Monday night game. There was a lot of bad football played in that Monday night game. And I was just shocked Denver won that game. Buffalo really played poorly. Too many turnovers by the Bills and some lucky bounces by Buffalo just to hang in there, actually. But what a dramatic ending. I haven't seen many in my football watching, which goes back 7 decades. Haven't seen many endings like that where a team actually had 12 men on the field and let a missed field goal get re-kicked and then lost the game. That is one tough way to lose. Baltimore Ravens, they've lost 9 games now in the last 3 years by leading by 7 or more points in the fourth quarter. That's the most in NFL history in any 3-year span. I've talked all season long and in prior years on this program about I just don't trust the Ravens. I think they're great in October, November, but the weather starts to cool. They start finding ways to lose until January. They're just not the same team, but we'll see. I always like John Harbaugh as a coach. We'll see if he can get them turned around. They have a big home game against Cincinnati in the extremely competitive AFC North. Dallas trounces the New York Giants. Dallas 6-1 against teams under 500, 0-2 against teams over 500. You can tell from that the Dallas schedule has not been that hard, but everybody's drinking that silver and blue Kool-Aid again. Dallas has their fan base, which is huge. Very excited right now. They have Carolina this week. They're a 10.5-point favorite. Should win that game. You never know, though, the Cowboys, but they do have a tendency to beat the hell out of lesser opposition. Pittsburgh Steelers, it's unique with Pittsburgh. 6-3 on the season. Good season for Pittsburgh. They have been outgained in every one of those 9 games so far this year. They're the only team that goes 6-3 ever and be outgained in all 9 games, including their 6 wins. Steelers offense very stilted. Run game coming along, though, but they're not going to pull this off with their passing game the way it is. And the last comment I'll make is about the Cleveland Browns. There's a lot of AFC North here. The Cleveland Browns lost Deshaun Watson to a shoulder injury. It was not the shoulder injury that had just bothered him a couple of weeks ago. This was an all-new injury, but he needs to have surgery. His season is over. Very unfortunate for the Browns, who now have lost their starting quarterback and their starting running back, Nick Chubb. Very, very tough. Our team with a very good defense. And let's face it, Watson was an electric player a couple of years ago in Houston. And if he was regaining his form, he was starting to regain some of that spontaneous play that made him, it really made him C.J. Stroud before there was a C.J. Stroud or Kyler Murray or whatever. And now he's out for the season. A devastating blow for the Browns. But I'll tell you what's more devastating for Cleveland. This was the second year of Watson's $230 million guaranteed contract. But boy, the numbers weren't kicking in yet. His cap hit for the next 3 years, $63.9 million per year. That is a number, ladies and gentlemen, and it's about 28% of the salary cap as it is right now. The cap will go up. But when you got 1/4, greater than 1/4 of your salary cap is tied up in your quarterback, and your quarterback's been kind of shaky up to now, and now he's going to have to come back from a shoulder injury. Not a good situation for the Cleveland Browns. I guess they were trying to make some hay, especially this year, when he counted much less against the cap than he will the next 3 years. But trouble ahead for the Cleveland Browns. All right, Xander, let's take a look at the standings right now after 10 weeks in the NFL. You can see there, you had the Philadelphia Eagles sitting there, the only team at 8-1, playing good football. Let's face it, we talked about this all season long with Sal Powell. The Eagles are playing good, and they're beating whoever's in front of them, not doing it with a bunch of drama, but they're doing it. And they're in the midst now of this 6-game gauntlet. Up come the Kansas City Chiefs at home. By the way, this is the Eagles' 17th game. The league went from 16 to 17 games. They had a nice, tight little schedule there, where you played 4 AFC teams and you played your own division teams, 6 total games, and then you played another division within your conference. That was 4 more games, and then you played the team that finished in the same position as you did in the other 2 divisions within the NFC. And now the league, of course, had to have more money, so they added a 17th game and decided that you would play another division in the AFC, the other conference. Well, for the Eagles, it was the AFC West. And lo and behold, while Dallas draws the LA Chargers, and Dallas gets another home game a few weeks ago and beats LA out in SoFi Stadium, the Eagles get to travel to the defending Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs' house, a notoriously tough place to win, and play on Monday night. So the Eagles drew a real short straw there with that 17th game. But we're going to talk about that game, obviously, extensively for the next 70 minutes or so, and look forward to doing that. Philadelphia, though, sitting at 8-1. Dallas 6-3, 2 games behind. The Eagles really have a 2.5-game lead because they beat Dallas a couple weeks ago. But as I said, Eagles in the midst of a tough run right here. After this game in Kansas City, it's Buffalo and then San Francisco, both at home, which will help out immensely. Buffalo really shaky right now, but they're a streak team. They're a streaky team. They could come into Philadelphia and play good football. So we'll look at that. The NFC South, I mean, come on, please. What are you going to do? Somebody's going to win it. Detroit looking very impressive out in offensively anyway against the Chargers. Detroit now 7-2, and yet you still don't hear them. You don't hear Detroit discussed in the pantheon of the really good NFL teams like Philadelphia, Kansas City, and the like. So Detroit still has to earn some stripes, if I may mix a metaphor there. Minnesota, great story. Josh Dobbs wins again. Minnesota was 0-3. Remember that. They're 6-1 in their last 7. So kudos to the Vikings for keeping their season together. And the NFC West tightening up now. San Francisco and Seattle at 6-3. In the AFC, Miami 6-3. Buffalo now 5-5. That's incredible. The Bills are 5-5. They're only a half game ahead of the New York Jets, who have no offense at all. Buffalo, one of the most powerful offenses in the league, and the Jets, when they have a first down, they ought to stop the game and hand out game balls. But they're at Buffalo, and Buffalo travels to the Meadowlands this week to play the Jets. Jacksonville, I'm sorry. I disagreed with Sal last week, and I was right. Jacksonville is not ready for prime time. I don't want to hear it. They got waylaid by San Francisco last week. They are not ready to play with the big boys, and I don't know if they will be by the end of the season. Talked about the AFC North. One tough division right now. The Bengals a shocking loss to Houston. Maybe it's not fair to say that. Houston's been loaded up with high number one picks. They should be getting better. Stroud is a revelation right now for the Texans. But Cincinnati, that was a major stumble, losing that game at home. Cincinnati, remember, they started 0-3. They'd won 5 straight. You lose a lot of your margin for error when you start off like that, right? You know, we've talked about it how many times. Teams that miss the play, that start that badly, their chances of making the playoffs are very slim. The Bengals might prove that out. And then the Chiefs sitting at 7-2. No one's going to threaten that in the AFC. All right, Xander, quick look, if you will, at the Week 11 schedule. It's you got I told you the Thursday night game, Baltimore at Cincinnati. Cincinnati at Baltimore, tough AFC North game. It's going to be tough sledding for Baltimore there. The Ravens coming off that surprise loss to Cleveland. You got Pittsburgh traveling to Cleveland now. But the Browns, like I said, losing your starting quarterback. That'll be a low-scoring but tough game. Browns defense is for real. Jets, Buffalo, I mentioned. Of course, we'll get here in this area. We'll get New York Giants, Washington. Of course, we will. Can't get enough of those big blue New York football Giants. Minnesota travels to Denver. Broncos, got to give them credit. Broncos got off the mat. They've gotten off the mat, and they're hanging in there, and they're playing very competitive defensively after a 70-point blowout by Miami a month or so ago. And then you got later on, you got Tampa Bay traveling to San Francisco. San Francisco will dust them. And the Sunday night game, as I said, Minnesota and Denver, and Atlanta, Indianapolis, New England, and New Orleans on a bye, much needed for the Patriots. All right, when we get back, Xander, let's join Ray Didinger will join me, the Hall of Famer and the longtime media magnet, really, for the Philadelphia Eagles and prolific author. Be great to have Ray on. We're going to talk Eagles Chiefs, and we'll go around the NFL. We'll do that next on This Week in Pro Football, presented by Kennedy Ford.
Celebrate your victories in style at Spring Mill Country Club. From Eagles wins to baby showers, weddings to birthdays, our picturesque venue is ready to host your special events. Make memories that last a lifetime in our stunning surroundings. Call Spring Mill today at 215-675-6000 and elevate your next event to unforgettable heights. Contact us now to book 215-675-6000.
John Kennedy Ford. Their reputation sounded too good to be true, so my partner and I decided to do a little digging.
They know we can see them, right?
We could get them a great deal if they just come inside.
They made us. Run! Uncovering a better car buying experience is easy at John Kennedy Ford. Enjoy your ride.
If you own a company and you're not producing a podcast, you're missing out. The public consumes messaging when they're ready. Join the professional podcast network of companies and let JAKIB Media Partners put you in the podcast arena. Come to our professional studio, or we'll come to your place of business and professionally produce your company podcast. Call JAKIB Media right now at 267-261-3428. 267-261-3428.
Welcome back to This Week in Pro Football, presented by Kennedy Ford. Pat Callahan joining you on JAKIB Sports YouTube channel. Give me a follow, please, at TWIPF Pat. And everyone will recognize this gentleman. It's an honor to have him on the show. That's the NFL Hall of Famer, 4-time Emmy Award winner, author of the Eagles Encyclopedia and his latest book, Finished Business. And, of course, the prolific and longtime WIP host and NBC Sports Philadelphia studio host. That would be Ray Didinger. Ray, it's great to have you on. Thanks for joining me.
Always good to be with you, Pat. How are you doing?
All right. I'm fine. Thank you very much. I was just looking back, getting ready. I remember, Ray, many of your columns from the Philadelphia Bulletin. Now, you and I are, we're dating ourselves just substantially here. But the Philadelphia Bulletin, Philadelphia Daily News. Do you miss those days of those print days when newspapers were king in Philadelphia?
I miss those days. People sometimes ask me, do I miss the newspaper business? And my normal response is, I miss what the newspaper business used to be.
Right.
It's very sad now. I mean, newspapers have totally lost their influence and their impact. I mean, when I first got into the business in late 60s, there was no sports talk radio, there was no cable TV, there were no podcasts, there was no ESPN. It was purely a newspaper world. And the columnists and the beat writers, they were the opinion shapers. We had all the power. And it hasn't been that way for a long time. No. But I look back on those days. I mean, I was a newspaper guy for almost 30 years. And I really think, Pat, that I got the way I kind of look at it, I kind of feel like I caught the last really good wave. At the point where I came in and the point where I went out was really kind of the best of newspapering. I mean, there were 4 newspapers in the city of Philadelphia, fully functioning and competing with each other. You had the Inquirer, you had the Daily News, you had the Bulletin, and you had the Philadelphia Journal. And they were all publishing every day, and they were competing like crazy and spending money, and there was lots of space, and it was really fun. It was really exciting, but those days seem like long ago.
Yeah, man, boy, and how many of those years too did you have to cover a team that was going 2-12 every year with Pete Lisk as the quarterback, and yet still people couldn't get enough. People still couldn't get enough, and there were 60,000 people in Franklin Field every Sunday, no matter what the record was.
Yeah, my first year of covering the Eagles was 1970, and that was the last year at Franklin Field.
Yeah.
And then 71 they moved into the vet. So timing wise, it was really fun. I got to see them play that last year at Franklin Field, and then I got to see them move into the vet when it was new and exciting.
That's right. State of the art, right?
And the teams weren't particularly exciting, as you said. They weren't very good. No. But then I was able to cover them all the way up through the Vermeil years. When he came in and took that team, and the job that he should have been put in the Hall of Fame just for what he did in Philadelphia. I mean,
that's true.
Kansas City and St. Louis, he had great success there too. But what he did in his time in Philadelphia, getting that franchise back on its feet, was almost a miracle.
That's true. All right, Ray. Let's get to the present day here. Philadelphia and Kansas City, a huge Monday night game. And the Eagles traveling now to Arrowhead to play the defending Super Bowl champions. Let's take a look at the Eagles at the bye for just a minute. What would you say the Eagles, and I'm comparing them to the Super Bowl team that went last year. Mm-hmm. Tell me, where do you think this team is superior to that team of last year, and where do you think this team is notably weaker than that team from last year?
Superior? I don't know. I think they're pretty much the same in a lot of areas. I think they're very good on the defensive line. I think the addition of Jalen Carter, even though Javon Hargrave was a loss. I mean, he was a really good player, but I think Jalen Carter is better. And I think he's just going to continue to get better. And that defensive line, with the way Sweat is coming on, I mean, he's just getting better every week. And I think that the defensive line might be better than what they had last year, and that's pretty good, because the defensive line was strong last year. I think it's even better this year. Yeah. The one area where I would say it's a concern that's not as good, and it's the secondary. They really miss. Gardner Johnson was, even though he's only here the 1 year, was a better player than I thought he was. I mean, I knew when they signed him, I knew who he was, and I thought that he would come in and he'd play okay, but he was better than that. I mean, he really helped them last year. I mean, he made a lot of big plays. Right. And when he left, they haven't been able to replace him. The combination of him leaving and then some injuries, that secondary has been kind of a muddle all this time. And right now, I mean, you look at the numbers; they're pretty ugly in terms of where their pass defense ranks. And now you're going into a stretch where these next few weeks you're going to get some quarterbacks that can light you up.
I know.
So there's going to be a lot of pressure on the new defensive coordinator to patch that thing together, because the next 2 weeks they're going to be up against some quarterbacks that can really do some damage.
I know, and that's going to put out a pressure, as you just mentioned, on the Eagles' defensive line. But it certainly did work out for Howie, Ray, because they were able to replace Hargrave with Carter. That's 4 years of let's face it, a bargain rate with Carter as opposed to what they would need to pay Hargrave. But Ray, let's take a look too, though. I want to take a look at the opposing coach, because look, we hear a lot of talk about Andy Reid. We do, but I don't think the magnitude of the numbers really comes to the fore with this guy. He's now 4th all time in wins as an NFL head coach. 276 and 156 all time. 2 Super Bowl wins. Where would you rank this guy? Because all you know about the Mount Rushmore of coaches, and Shula and Lombardi and Hallis. How do you see Reid ultimately viewed as as one of the top tier NFL head coaches?
It's right there. I mean, I think that there's no question that he'll be first ballot Hall of Fame selection. Has to be. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned, I mean, he's the 4th winningest coach right now, and he ain't going anywhere. I mean, he still loves coaching. I mean, I've seen him interviewed where he talks about how he still loves coaching, which he does. And he ain't walking away from Patrick Mahomes. That's for sure. I mean, he's got a great young quarterback there that's got a lot of football ahead of him. So, I mean, Andy, he could go back to 4 or 5 more Super Bowls and win a couple more and add even more luster to that record. I mean, it's so funny. I mean, I remember I covered his first win with the Eagles in '99 when they beat the Cowboys at the old vet. And I remember him in the locker room with a towel around his neck, holding the game ball up that Jeff Lurie had presented him with his first NFL victory. And to look at him then and to think that there wasn't anybody that day that was projecting that down the road would be putting him in the same sentence as Paul Brown and Vince Lombardi. That's true. But that's the truth of it. I mean, you can't argue against the numbers. The numbers are there. And I know there are some people that still are critical of him, but not me. I mean, I think he's a great coach, and maybe the best 30 minutes of his coaching career was the second half of the last Super Bowl. He brought his team from 10 points down with an injured quarterback and was able to win that game. That may have been Andy's finest hour.
Yeah. One thing I think, though, Ray, you might lay on Coach Reid is he may, in fact, have missed an opportunity to upgrade his wide receiver position for 2023. This is and let's face it, the way the game is played today, you have such an unbelievable advantage if you have a top flight wide receiver, because generally he's either going to catch it or there's going to be a flag on the field. Is the fact that Kansas City is challenged at wide receiver, how beneficial is that for the Eagles Monday night? Because we talked about the fact their secondary is struggling.
It helps. It helps. It looking at this team now, the way they're constructed, I'm talking about the Chiefs, it reminds me a little bit of his Eagles teams. When he was trying to win games with Todd Pinkston and Charles Small, and we talked endlessly about the fact that what are you doing? I mean, you have this young quarterback that is obviously the trigger man of your offense. You clearly want to throw the ball. I mean, that's your philosophy. Why would you be lining up with such mediocre wide receivers? And then finally, they went out and they got Terrell Owens, and lo and behold, they went to a Super Bowl. Right. I look at this Chiefs team now, And it reminds me of the same kind of thing. I mean, it's a team that clearly wants to throw the ball. You got a great young quarterback that can get it there. And you're playing with a very, I'll be kind, a pedestrian group of wide receivers. Yeah. And every time I look at that, I think this reminds me a lot of the team that we saw in Philadelphia.
Yeah, it's a great analogy. It really is. And they have, let's face it, they got the reigning MVP who earns every bit of it. Mahomes is a special quarterback. Matter of fact, this is really a rare week, probably maybe the only time, Ray, when the Eagles may not have the best quarterback on the field. And that's a position that Eagle defense is not used to being in.
Right. Oh, yeah. He's special. There's no question about that. I mean, he makes some plays that only he can make. You know, I mean, you saw that. I remember thinking that with Favre. You know, I mean, when you watch the young Favre, I mean, in the course of a season, he would make a half a dozen plays. He'd say nobody else could make that play.
Right.
Nobody. Right. Now, the difference between them is that Mahomes doesn't make as many mistakes as Favre. I mean, Favre, for all of his greatness and all the big plays that he made a ton of mistakes.
That is correct.
A coach once said to me, I thought he had the best description ever of Brett Favre. And he loved him. But he said, Brett Favre is a quarterback who keeps both teams in the game. And I thought, and it's very true. I mean, when he was playing a quarterback, the Packers were never out of a game because he could always bring them back. But the other side of it was they were never safely ahead because he could make
exactly right. And you could point to the playoff games against Philadelphia here when he threw up a couple terrible interceptions. The game against the Giants in that freezing cold game when he threw a terrible interception. So you're certainly right about that. This guy does not do that. Ray, I want to ask you something else too about just a look around the NFL since we started that just a minute ago. I noted at the top of the show how 6 games this past weekend were decided by a field goal on the last play of the game. And yes, for red zone viewers and the like, it generates tremendous interest and the drama that is the NFL. But what I wanted to ask you as a guy who's been watching football for 7 decades or so are these fantastic finishes, to quote that old Harry Callis segment that used to be on Sundays, are they covering up the fact that there's some bad football being played in the league this year, particularly at the quarterback position?
Yeah, for sure. I agree with that wholeheartedly. I was talking to Ron Jaworski, in fact, right where I saw you at the Otho Davis dinner that night when we were there, and Ronnie and I were talking. Right. And I said, is it just me, or does it seem like the quality of play across the league this year is not very good? And Ron said, I agree with you. It's not. And you can offer up a lot of theories as why, but what strikes me is when I read on a Monday after the games are played on Sunday, and I'm reading all the different wire service stories of all the different games, all the different accounts of the games, somewhere, if there are a dozen games, 13 games, 16 games, however many games are played, you read those stories. Somewhere, Pat, I guarantee you, somewhere in the first 5 paragraphs of that story will be a quote from usually the coach, but sometimes a player, where he says, well, it wasn't pretty, but we found a way to win.
That's true.
Now, we're all saying that in Philadelphia this year. Yeah. I mean, after every Eagles game, it's sort of it wasn't pretty, but we found a way to win. That's not just here. Yeah. I mean, that's being said in every winning locker room around the world. So, I mean, what it tells you is that's the NFL right now. Yeah. I mean, teams are winning, but do we have any really truly great teams out there? Yeah. I mean, the Eagles have the best record. I mean, that's 8-1. That speaks for itself. Right. But was anybody going to say, yeah, that's a great team? I don't think so. I just think it sort of reflects where the league is right now. And the other thing, and this is another topic for another day, but the officiating around the league this year is really awful. Yeah. I mean, it's been not very good for a while, but I think this has been a particularly brutal year for officiating.
Yeah, I agree. I think it has been a bad year for officiating, and it's just a bad time for that, right? the social media is consumed by the NFL. And every missed or made call, bad call by the officials is a Zapruder film that is just broken down and broadcast to 50 million people.
Sure.
But I don't know how, Ray, the league has been trying to fix this forever. And, I don't know, full-time refs. I don't know. What is that going to do? I don't know. But I don't know how the league I hate to see, quite frankly, Ray, I'd hate to see the league get more automated in terms of its officiating. I just think these guys, especially when it comes to roughing the passer, of which there have been 65 roughing the passer penalties called this year. And I'd lay a wager on you, Ray, that maybe 20 of them were actually roughing. The league's got to straighten some of these penalty issues out. You're right.
Yeah, they do. They do. And look, and I know you are too. I mean, I'm all for player safety. I really am. I want to make it a safer game. I want to, I want to minimize the long-term down the road CTE issue. I would like to see the players being able to walk away from the game healthier. I'm all in favor of that. But there are things that happen within the game, and roughing the passer is a perfect example where you just say, "Oh, come on." Yeah. I mean, there are times when you barely brush the quarterback, and a flag is thrown, or it's completely, it's unavoidable. I mean, the defender's coming in, and I mean, just the law of gravity. He can't stop. I mean, he hits the quarterback. He's not going to hurt him.
That's right.
Here comes the flag now.
That's right. Yeah.
I mean, that's
up in midair, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's and that's all over the field. I mean, you see the defenseless receiver calls down the field and all that kind of stuff. But it goes double at the quarterback position because people are trying to keep your quarterbacks in the game. And even with that, we've had 10 rookie quarterbacks starting.
I know.
For the first half of the season. The most, even as much as you're trying to protect the quarterbacks, they're still going down.
Now, Sal Powell was quite adamant about it. He's on this show quite often. He told me never in the league have there been so many different quarterbacks have started an NFL game by this time in the season. And it's something, Ray, I'd love to have you back on. We could spend an entire hour talking about the quarterback position in this league. I'd love to do it with you. What are you? I know a guy as energetic and dynamic as you are. What are you up to these days? Are you in the midst of another project? Is there anything else you're doing relative to football that you want to get out there?
Well, I'm still doing stuff at WIP. They still bring me on, a couple times a month to just usually to sit in with the camera and Richie in the morning. My old partner, my longtime partner, Glenn McNeil, calls me from time to time and asks me if I'll, do a segment on a Saturday or a Sunday when he's with Mike Sielski or Jody. So I still do that. There is, I've done three different editions of the Eagles Encyclopedia. And if the Eagles win the Super Bowl, the publisher has already talked to me that if they win the Super Bowl this year, which not out of the question, we're going to have to turn that puppy around and get a fourth edition of the Eagles Encyclopedia out in the bookstores for next year. So I'm already putting filing some paperwork and some notes and setting some stuff aside just in case, because I did it last year. I had a lot of stuff already written last year when they went to the Super Bowl so that we could do the quick turnaround and have the book out. And, turns out they didn't win that game.
That's
right. I think there's a real good chance they're going to be back in it this year, and who knows? That's
right. All right. Well, I hope to have the chance to talk to you about it before that happens, before the season is over. I certainly appreciate you taking all this time today, Ray. It was great having you on. I wish you the best of luck, whatever you're doing. Look forward to seeing you again. All right.
I look forward to it too, Pat. Always pleasure being with you.
All right. Thank you very much. The great Ray Didinger joining me there. Lengthy segment. I appreciate Ray taking all that time. Just an absolute encyclopedia of professional football. It was great to have him on. I'm sorry, Sean Green. I've been holding Sean up. He's way too valuable for that. We'll bring Sean on after this quick break. We're going to talk about his favorite team, the Big Blue, the New York Giants, and the Cowboys. He's a big Cowboys fan too. We'll talk about that and Eagles Chiefs. We'll do that all next on This Week in Pro Football, presented by Kennedy Ford.
I got it. Anything can happen when you go live. Live Casino and Hotel Philadelphia, voted best casino in Pennsylvania.
Discover the essence of true community banking with First Bank, your trusted partner across eastern Pennsylvania and New Jersey. Their network of branches brings you convenient access to dedicated personal bankers who understand your unique needs. At First Bank, you're not just a customer, you're a valued member of the community. But that's not all. They are excited to join forces with another pillar of the community banking world in eastern Pennsylvania, Malvern Bank. Their team of professionals will fit seamlessly into First Bank's culture of dedication and understanding your financial aspirations to fuel your success. With a deep-rooted commitment to eastern Pennsylvania, Malvern Bank stands as a testament to community values and unwavering support. Experience the difference of real relationships and dedicated personal bankers. Connect with any member of the team today at our Westchester office, conveniently located at 849 Paoli Pike, or you can call them directly at 484-881-3800. First Bank is an equal opportunity lender and member FDIC. At Whistler Pearlstein LLP, we assemble the most effective team to handle all of your legal needs. There are players and pretenders, but our hustle and heart set us apart. In practice now for over 75 years, we're proud to be one of the most prominent full-service law firms in the Philadelphia region. We offer 17 different areas of practice, including business, corporate, and tax education law, real estate, zoning, and land development, municipal law, and litigation. Our top-rated attorneys and staff are laser-focused on client success. We strive to provide outstanding legal counsel with the highest level of care and consideration. Let us show you the Whistler way. Learn more at WhistlerPearlstein.com or email Michael J. O'Donohue at mod@WhisPearl.com. WhistlerPearlstein.com or mod@WhisPearl.com.
I want to be a game changer in construction. I want to be able to provide diversity in the workforce, and it starts at the top. I started Rodriguez Construction Group in 2013 with 2 employees, and we're 85 strong today. M&T has been a great partner since day one, providing us the access, the opportunity, the funding to be able to continue our growth. We can change the community in a positive way, one person at a time, one job at a time, and one family at a time. I think M&T Bank is very committed to the community, just like us.
Welcome back to This Week in Pro Football on JAKIB Sports. Of course, I've held this gentleman up. You just can't do that because all kinds of terrible things will happen to you if you delay the great Sean Green from the Sports Gambling Podcast. Sean, how you doing?
Doing great. Yeah. Tough act to follow, following the legend himself, Ray Didinger.
Didinger, that's right.
I had to send a screenshot to my dad and my uncle. They're like, don't blow it. Don't blow it.
Did you? I hope when you sent the screenshot, you pointed out, look, Dad, there's a legend on the screen, and there's Ray Didinger. I mean, you did
the legend
like that,
himself, right? The legend himself, and also Ray Didinger.
Well done. Sean Green from the Sports Gambling Podcast. You got to check this out on the website, sportsgamblingpodcast.com. You want to check out the referee report where these guys actually break down who the hell is officiating at every game, and then of course you can't miss the getting in on the Washington Commanders name change odds for next year.
You bet on anything these days. It's great.
What's your bet on the Commanders? Is the bet just, are they going to change the name, or can you actually put odds on a specific name?
Yeah, no, they have all the odds for all the different names. And then there was that petition of people wanting to change it back to the Redskins. I think something with like Red Wolves or something like that might appease the fan base. there's some silly ones. Like as an Eagles fan, the idea of them calling themselves the DC Magicians, I'm all for that. I would love to make fun of the Magicians.
Yeah.
But honestly, I think Dan Snyder kind of stumbled into a good name when he just went with Washington Football Team, and then they had to change it to Commanders, which seems like a dud. So
well,
we'll see what they end up with.
My suggestion is crooks or grifters,
something
like that, which would go perfect with that city.
Yes, exactly.
I think Eagles grifters would be Eagles. Hey, who we play? Oh, grifters are coming in this week.
No, I like that. Yeah, I don't know if the city would get behind it, but I think that's a great name.
Sean Green, 2 weeks ago, the New York Football Giants, who actually came into this season with thoughts of playing deep into January, lost by 24 points to the really half-hapless Vegas Raiders. They upped that last week by losing by 32. And that was with a late gift touchdown to the Dallas Cowboys. Are they going to lose by 40 this week when they go to Washington? What the hell is going on with the Giants, and how do you possibly put money on them?
Yeah, so I actually did pick the Giants. I thought the spread was getting a little too high. I get it. No one wants to bet the Giants, and unfortunately in the NFL, sometimes you got to take these ugly dogs, especially when the number gets this big, especially when it's a division game. And you look at the history of the Giants, one of the teams they match up well with and play well with, even when they're not playing well, is the Commanders. Ron Rivera, 1-8 against the spread as a favorite against the New York Giants.
Oh my God.
Something about this Giants team, and it might be, to your point, it might be a backdoor by Tommy DeVito, who, has to always watch his back. If you've seen Goodfellas, Tommy DeVito, walking in thinking he's going to be a made man.
That's right.
Got to be careful, Tommy.
Yeah.
So I think it might be a late score. Whatever it is, they match up well against Sam Howell. I can't explain it, right? So the Eagles defense much better than the Giants. Sam Howell puts up like 30 points against them. Right. And then Sam Howell plays the Giants, much worse defense, only scores 7 points. Like the NFL is weird like this. Certain teams, especially in division, play each other well. Yeah. So I get it. Surface level, no one wants to bet on the Giants, but I think at the number, this might actually be the play.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny. The Commanders, just as an observation, they don't run the ball nearly enough. I now know why Eric Bieniemy did not get a head coaching job.
Yeah,
remember that what was I forget which game? A game against the Bears. He threw the ball 55 straight plays. What the hell is that? Yeah, it is.
And to their credit, they have been blocking a little bit better, scheming up a little bit better, because Sam Howell there for a while was just getting killed. He was like on a historic rate of getting sacked. So they figured that out a little bit, but yeah, still haven't figured out the offense completely. Although if you are a DC fan, Sam Howell has at least shown some signs of promise. Like, I don't think you definitely have to draft a quarterback next year. I think you might.
No, I agree.
Build on what he's shown.
I agree. And but the Pittsburgh Steelers is an example, Sean. They've shown how you could win with an NFL quarterback, and that's to take the ball out of his hands.
Yes.
And the Steelers are running the ball now nonstop, and the Commanders should think about running the ball a good deal more than they do right now. You know, as you said, Howell's playing well. Let's go to the game that really is the big game here and the big game in the NFL, which is the Monday nighter, Philadelphia, Kansas City. First off, Sean, both teams coming off a bye. Now, when you're weighing a situation like that, do you usually give credence or a slight favor to the team that's coming off a bye if they're playing a team that isn't? And in the case of both teams now coming off a bye, is the whole thing canceled out?
Yeah, I think it is, right, because they're both kind of getting healthy. Although I would say, something you kind of nailed it, but I would say I think you do rate the teams that needed the bye a little bit more. Sometimes if you're playing hot and you go into a bye, that can kind of hurt you.
Right.
Or if you're banged up like the Eagles were, Jalen Hurts with that knee, Cam Jurgens, a couple other guys going into that bye, getting those 2 weeks of rest, getting some guys healthy, getting Jalen's knee right, that can help you. So I don't think all bye weeks are created equal. Some teams need them more than others, and sometimes I think they can hurt you. So I think you kind of got to look at the individual matchup, honestly.
All right. Well, in this game, Sean, Kansas City, a 2.5-point favorite. I'm not surprised at that. Defending Super Bowl champs at home. It's actually kind of an homage to the Eagles.
Yeah.
If you think about it. But again, the number that does surprise me, at least that I saw, was the over-under 45.5. Did you expect a bigger number than that?
I don't. So I get why it's 45. Now the Eagles offense playing well, putting up points. Chiefs offense is it's had some moments where it's perked up, but not as high flying as it normally was. And I guess to me, it's not that shocking. It's at 45 because really the story of the Chiefs team this year is their defense. Their defense is playing really, really well. And the Eagles defense has had some up and down moments, but I do think they actually kind of match up okay against this Chiefs team, if that's possible.
All right. But I mean, look, let's discount the Chiefs defense a little bit. If I'm playing Denver twice and I'm playing Vegas twice, that's a big boost for your defense.
It's certainly a test for this Chiefs defense. Both defenses played the Dolphins pretty well. And the similar reason is the Chiefs can slow down the run a little bit, and I think the Eagles can do that as well. Now, really, the matchup that the Eagles, I'm sure, are all over their whiteboard is going to be stop Travis Kelce.
Yeah, I was just about to ask you this. Right.
Yeah. Everyone, it's got to be stop Travis Kelce, and the Eagles have struggled with tight ends. Yeah. But I wouldn't be surprised if they have Slay on Travis Kelce. Bradbury actually has done historically well against Kelce. But he's kind of struggled this year. He does seem like he's slowed down a little bit. So Kelce is the guy. I mean, if you're looking at props positively for the Chiefs, not that I'm one to give these out, but Rashee Rice, the second guy, might benefit from all the attention being drawn to Travis Kelce there.
What's Kelce's prop for receptions over under? Do you have that?
Number of receptions or receiving yards?
Number of receptions.
I can pull that up, but
do you have receiving yards? Whichever one you might have.
Yeah, I'll get this here in a second, but I would, if I had to guess, I'm going to say his receiving props 85.5 yards, I think is a fair. Oh no, they got him down to 75.5.
75.5. That's a pretty big number for a tight end.
It is
75.5. So that'd be probably somewhere around 8 or 9 receptions. Then would be probably the number. But you're right. This is where the Eagles have to. If I'm telling you, Sean, you shut this guy down or you control this guy
just a little.
Make the Chiefs beat you with Isaiah Pacheco and that cabal of really below average receivers that they have, wide receivers, and you're going to win. You are going to win.
And I think the Eagles D-line, this is an awesome game. I know props Hassan Reddick over a half sack. I really like that a lot because I think he's got a chip on his shoulder after that Super Bowl where he's not one to make excuses about the field, but you could tell a guy like him really playing on that slippery field seemed to slow him down. And since he got the cast off his hand, it's been 6 games. He's had a sack in 5 out of those 6 games for 7.5 sacks total. I really think he gets home at least once here on Monday night.
I think the Eagles have a real good chance to win this game. And they are the better team, in my opinion. Now, this is like I said to Ray Didinger. This is probably the only time all season the Eagles will play a team where they may not have the best quarterback on the field. And that's a different look for them. Yeah. But hey, they just saw this guy about 8 months ago, so they shouldn't be surprised. So I look for the Eagles to win. Do you see it that way?
Oh, yeah. You know me. But I think this is – I think the case for the Eagles is I think they're the more motivated team, right? Like if the Chiefs lose this, it's not all over. The Eagles have had this date circled since he came down on the Chiefs. And Jalen Hurts seems to be a good guy at getting revenge. Got revenge against Tua, has gotten revenge against some of these other teams that he's had issues with. And I think he gets it this Monday against the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, it's a non-conference game for Kansas City in a division where they can't possibly lose that division.
Yeah.
So you're certainly right when it comes to motivation. Okay, Sean Green, just 2 other games I thought were of interest. One, of course, is America's team, they're always America's team when they just blasted the hell out of some other sub-500 team like they did last week, the Giants. Dallas now goes to Carolina. I would wager you, Sean, that 90% of the public's money is going to land on Dallas. Is that the way you think it's going to go, and who do you like here?
Yeah, public will probably be on the Dallas Cowboys, but Dallas Cowboys, as much as they do beat up on subpar teams, they're not great after these blowout wins. They're only 3-9 against the spread after winning by double digits. And you look at the situation spot. I would be careful. I would remind everyone these look ahead games to Thursday could be tough spots. Like if you're the Dallas Cowboys, you just had a blowout win at home against a divisional opponent. Now you got to go to the East Coast against Carolina while also kind of looking ahead towards a division game on Thanksgiving. These teams that have Thanksgiving games on Thursday, I would be careful because we saw it with the Bengals and the Ravens last week. Both those teams maybe looking ahead to this Thursday night game tonight, and both lost outright in games they probably shouldn't have lost. So I don't know if the Cowboys would lose outright, but Carolina catching 10.5 points here as a home dog coming off the bye. Frank Reich with some familiarity of the Cowboys. I think this is just a weird scheduling spot for the Cowboys. So I would lean towards taking the Panthers here and the 11 points, something like that.
Just an observation though about that game. I'm not asking you to weigh in, but it always frustrates me. I imagine it frustrates a Carolina Panther. Let's face it, these guys, they don't want to go out and be 1-8. They don't want to lose games. And they know to a man that they have a better chance of winning with Andy Dalton, a quarterback, than they do with this kid. And yet they're going to play this kid right down the line, come hell or high water. And I think it's unfortunate for the Panthers, who really, I think, Sean, are a better team than their record. And maybe you're right. Maybe we'll see a little bit of that this week. The other game I did want you to mention or weigh in on was the Thursday nighter. I think it's a huge game for Cincinnati. Now they have to go into Baltimore, and if they want to be a factor in that division title race, they're going to have to win this game. How do you see it?
Yeah, so this is definitely, I was going back and forth, but in the AFC North especially, I love division dogs, and I love Joe Burrow as a dog. Joe Burrow as an underdog of 3 or more points, 15-2 against the spread. I got it when it was 4 points. I still like it here at 3.5. I think this is, kind of a back against the wall situation for the Bengals. I know the Ravens are also coming off a loss. I would look to the injury stuff. Trey Hendrickson, the Bengals pass rusher, who looked like he had a really bad injury. Turns out he's 100% fine, which is big news because it looks like Marlon Humphrey, the cornerback for the Ravens, is out. And more importantly, their left tackle, Ronnie Stanley, is out. This feels to me field goal game at worst. It feels like we're finally going to get a good Thursday night football game. So I'll take the Bengals and the points here.
Very good. And Justin Bruni, who's coming up in just a minute, I'm going to get him to guarantee me 2 Joe Mixon touchdowns.
Let's go.
He said he can make that happen, so I'm going to make sure that happens. But all right, Sean Green, where does everybody find you now the next few days? You got to follow this guy at Sean Green on X. Also follow at Gambling Podcast, Sports Gambling Podcast. Terrific post.
Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah, just put in Sports Gambling Podcast on Google. You can't miss us. If you got YouTube TV, put in Sports Gambling Podcast. Check out our VSiN show over there. And great couple of weeks of football coming up with the extra. It feels like a bonus NFL week when you get 3 games on Thanksgiving.
And you got 3 games, 3 decent games too. Yeah. Interesting to see Detroit. Thanksgiving, they're going to be a solid favorite. That'll be fun watching that, and I hope to have you next week. I know you might be traveling, but somebody from your estimable organization will be joining me. We're going to be on Wednesday night next week. Sean, thanks for taking the time, and appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, take it easy, Pat. Good seeing you.
All right, the great Sean Green, check it in there from the Sports Gambling Podcast. Please check that out. I want you to check this guy out too. Justin Bruni coming up now in just a minute. We're going to talk some fantasy football. I'm going to throw a bunch of names to Justin, and he's going to guarantee me that my team will do well. We'll do all that next on This Week in Pro Football, presented by Kennedy Ford.
If you own a company and you're not producing a podcast, you're missing out. The public consumes messaging when they're ready. Join the professional podcast network of companies and let JAKIB Media Partners put you in the podcast arena. Come to our professional studio, or we'll come to your place of business and professionally produce your company podcast. Call JAKIB Media right now at 267-261-3428. 267-261-3428.
John Kennedy Ford. Their reputation sounded too good to be true, so my partner and I decided to do a little digging.
They know we can see them, right?
We could get them a great deal if they just come inside.
They made us. Run! Uncovering a better car buying experience is easy at at John Kennedy Ford. Enjoy your ride.
Johnny Apple's restaurant and bar opened in 2001 and for over 20 years has been serving great food and good times to Bucks County residents, friends, and family. Ideally located at 184 Buck Road in Holland, Johnny Apple's offers a terrific array of steaks, seafood, and daily specials. They also host private parties and affairs of any size. For excellent food, great company, and a relaxed lunch or dinner, check out Johnny Apple's restaurant at 215-953-9900 or at johnnyapplesrestaurant.com.
Welcome back. This week in pro football, week number 11, the National Football League. Very pleased to be joined, as I am every week, by the great Justin Bruni from SGPN. Justin, how you doing?
Doing well, sir. Happy week 11. How are we doing?
Well, I don't know, pal. I had a Bafo week last week, Justin. A Bafo week last week. Long overdue with some of the guys on my team, and I want you to guarantee me I'm going to have it again. So we'll go, well, if we have time, we'll go through that. I don't want to hog it.
Okay.
But talking about long overdue, Justin, let me start with that. You and I spoke last week about some guys that is it time for them to break out? And it's the usual suspects. We talked about it: Devontae Adams, Garrett Wilson, Calvin Ridley, Tony Pollard. None of them did a thing last week. Is the window shutting on these guys, or do you think there's hope for any of them to snap out of it?
Yeah, I mean, Devontae Adams actually had a better week last week. I believe he had like 5 or 6 catches, 86 receiving yards, certainly better than his first week with Aiden O'Connell. So I'm hoping that propels forward again this week, have a decent matchup up against the Dolphins. I think there's positive game flow in that matchup, so I certainly want to get him on the field or in my fantasy lineup this week. Garrett Wilson's been absolutely solid these past handful of weeks, absolutely. Getting double-digit targets, at least 7 catches in 4 of his.
Well, you're right. But what does he score? I mean, I know you're talking about standard scoring where he might, PPR type stuff, but
it's not an offense to chase touchdowns with the Jets, right? Like even with Breece Hall, Breece Hall was breaking off huge runs, huge catches. You can't expect a lot of offense from that team, but you can expect a lot of production from those fillers like Breece Hall, from Garrett Wilson. Even Tyler Conklin had his best week last week. So I think that offense still is moving in the right direction to where you can give your fantasy guys some trust. Calvin Ridley was a little disappointing. He played well before the bye, but that's been Calvin Ridley all season. I trust his talent. We talked last week. I want to buy Jaguars. If you haven't passed your fantasy trade deadline, I am still trying to buy Calvin Ridley. I'm still trying to buy all the Jaguars I can, including Evan Ingram and Christian Kirk. Another great opportunity this week, kind of flipping to a better matchup going up against the Titans. And then Tony Pollard. Yeah, I'm with you. Let him set sail. It's Rico Dowdle season apparently.
But Justin, the first 3 names I mentioned, Adams, Wilson, and Ridley, they're challenged by the fact their team seemingly has a ceiling on 2 touchdowns at the most, right?
Maybe.
Well, but Dallas.
I would say for the Raiders and the Jets, that's accurate. I would say for the Jaguars, that might be a bit of an overreaction to Week 10.
I don't know. Well, we'll see. But okay. But Dallas, it's just an enigma, Justin. They actually tried, I thought, hard to get Pollard a touchdown last week. It's just not working. Do you still have hope that this guy's going to bust out? And I guess this week would be as good as any against Carolina.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity, but I don't trust it. If you have other options that you can pivot to, maybe like a Devin Singletary, he was able to blow up last week. Right. I don't want to necessarily chase, AJ Dillon. I know he's a name that we've brought up before, but I have Aaron Jones as a sit candidate this week, and that's a good matchup up against the Chargers. So I think if you have some names you could pivot off of Pollard, but tough to do with where you drafted him probably.
Yeah, I agree. Is Joshua Dobbs a bona fide fantasy starter, Justin?
In Superflex leagues, 100%. If you're starting 2 quarterbacks, Josh Dobbs needs to be in your lineup. Has a great matchup this week up against Denver, I believe. Now, in single QB, it gets a little bit tricky. I mean, if you're in a situation where you're dealing with injuries, Maybe you lost Rodgers. Maybe you lost Cousins. Maybe you tried filling that with Jimmy Garoppolo and he got pulled. And you're staring at, Dobbs over guys like Wilson or O'Connell. Obviously you'd want to start like maybe CJ Stroud over him still. Stroud, 15 touchdowns, just 2 interceptions. So I think that there's a lot of names out there that you're going to feel comfortable starting him over, just given the quarterback market. You've been echoing that sentiment throughout the entire season, just how down the position is this year. So yeah, in Superflex 100%, but there's still plenty of other options out there in single quarterback leagues.
All right. Justin, it's just amazing. You have, I'm sure you've been familiar with the phrase running back by committee forever, right? As have I. But running back by committee used to mean that, one guy would carry 60, 65%, and the other guy 35, right? And that would be frustrating enough as it was because the other guy might bogart a lot of touchdowns.
Right.
Miami, Pittsburgh, Detroit, Chicago, Washington, these teams are right down the middle as to the number of carries that a guy like, say, David Montgomery is getting versus Jahmyr Gibbs. In Pittsburgh, it's a down the middle split as it is in Washington. How do you advise people in terms of ranking not only these guys against all the other running backs in the league, but against each other?
Well, let's break them down a bit here. So starting with Detroit, I want to fire up both of those guys. I like the upside for Jahmyr Gibbs in the passing game. It was kind of funny last week. David Montgomery gave him the goal line carry. He gave him the goal line touchdown. He was coming to the sidelines to go out, and David Montgomery said, "No, go ahead, kid. Go ahead and take this. Go ahead and take this one in." My fantasy team still won, but I didn't like that.
Thrilled, with that.
I don't appreciate that. But I have fantasy leagues where I start both of them on the same team, so there's no hesitation for me to fire up both Gibbs and Montgomery. Shifting over to Pittsburgh, Najee Harris has been solid. I believe 3 touchdowns in his 4 last games. He's actually starting to come on a little bit, but you do have Jaylen Warren eating into his touches. When you're looking at this offense, you're seeing a team with 6 wins right now, right? But they can't pass the ball. So you should also, again, feel comfortable firing up Najee and Jaylen Warren. I don't know if I feel as comfortable, say, starting both of them on the same fantasy roster as I would be with Montgomery and Gibbs, just because of how much better and how elite that Lions offensive line is this year. Looking at the Bears, I do think you're going to want to shift off of Deonta Foreman. He's dealing with, I believe, an ankle or hamstring injury, and Khalil Herbert is practicing in full. So I think you're going to start to see that merry-go-round take another spin here, and they're going to shift off of their top guy from the previous week. And I do see more run for Khalil Herbert this week. Who is the other one that you had mentioned? Washington, yeah. Yeah, another one where I like Brian Robinson. We're starting Brian Robinson for sure. Antonio Gibson looking good, but dealing with a toe injury this week, and toe injuries can be very nagging for skill players like running backs and receivers. So I do not like Gibson this week, but going forward, his role will be increased. You're going to see him start to catch more passes with consistency, and he is going to be more of a boom or bust. So in those situations, Gibson, more of a fringe starter for your roster. Brian Robinson, lock, stock. You're getting him in your lineup every week. Running back 6 on the season. And then to the Dolphins to wrap up these committees. A-Chan is back this week. He's going to be healthy. You want to keep firing him up for sure. Mostert dealing with an injury, but like similar to Detroit, because there's so much offense, there's so much scoring opportunities. If these guys are full goes, they're in my lineups, hands down.
Yeah, I think A-Chain is going to be a difference maker for a lot of guys as you get towards these fantasy playoffs. All right, Justin, I got time for one more, and that is just give me, do you have any gut feels? Give me a couple names that you think might have a bust-out game coming up this week based upon, say, matchup or injuries or something like that.
So key starts or key sits?
Well, give me the starts.
Trying to think. I like Russ Wilson. Russ Wilson's just becoming very consistent. 18 passing touchdowns, 4 interceptions. The next best is CJ Stroud, who I mentioned. He's got 15 passing touchdowns and 2 interceptions.
Stroud is really a start now. He's a fantasy start now. I think I'd agree with you about that. I'm excited all. Matt Stafford, he's coming back. The Rams hosting Seattle. Do you feel better enough to start, say, Nakua? Or I guess you're going to start Kupp. You're looking at someone like Nakua now.
Puka and Cooper Kupp are very interesting this week. I want to start Puka, and there are definitely some leagues where he's in my lineup, but one, he's dealing with an injury coming into this week. I believe he'll play, but you have Kyrene Williams coming back, and you have Matthew Stafford coming back from injury. I see them maybe leaning on the ground a little bit more than we want to believe. So if their defense is holding up Seattle, I think we're going to see a lot of run from Kyrene Williams, Royce Freeman, and I just don't trust Puka right now. If I can get off of him, if I have some better options, maybe like a Terry McLaurin, I don't want to start like Odell Beckham Jr. over him. I would probably start him over Calvin Ridley this week, just given how polarizing Calvin Ridley has been. But I think I want to get him in my lineup.
Yeah, that's true. You and I will have to dialogue or debate throughout the rest of the season about the Jaguars. I think their offense is terrible, and yet they've got some talent. Man, they got some talent at receiver. They got some talent in that backfield, and yet they just can't unload. I don't know. 34-3 at home to San Francisco. That was ridiculous.
No, I mean, San Francisco's a good team, but I expected a lot better. I expected certainly a more competitive game. But I think Trevor Lawrence down the stretch can be of value to fantasy owners and to his team alike. So I think we're going to see some better days, especially this week. Tennessee's a great matchup. A key sit in that one, I would sit DeAndre Hopkins. I'm not in love with Will Levis. He threw 4 touchdowns 3 weeks ago. Hasn't thrown a touchdown since.
Yeah, there you go. And yet, I bet you there was a stampede to the waiver wire to grab him after that opening. All right, Justin, where does everybody find you? I know how to find you, thank God. Where does everybody else find you for those Saturday, Sunday panic advice?
Yeah, at SGPNJB on the X, and you can find us on YouTube at SGPN Fantasy Football.
All right, Justin, thanks a lot for taking the time. I'm sorry I held you up. Look forward to talking to you Wednesday night. All right.
Be good.
All right. Justin Bruni joining me here. And when we get back, this gentleman, I've held him up to, and you can't do that. That's Mike Sielski, the great writer for the Philadelphia Inquirer. Michael will be joining me. We're going to talk Eagles Chiefs and a couple other things too. We'll squeeze in with Mike as we wrap up week number 11 here, this week in pro football, presented by Kennedy Ford.
Concrete Cutting Systems Incorporated, the concrete cutting specialists in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. These guys are celebrating their 28th anniversary as the industry leader in the field of concrete cutting and robotic demolition. Any type of concrete cutting or drilling, concrete demolition or interior excavating, call the specialists. Concrete Cutting Systems. They're the only full union concrete cutting company based in Philadelphia. Call the guys today at 215-533-0652. The website is concretecuttingsystems.net. Let's go Eagles.
Evolution Energy Partners has helped hundreds of businesses save millions of dollars on their energy spend. They offer electricity and gas procurement strategies, efficiency audits and engineering and financing solutions, as well as online utility bill management. To learn how your business can save, visit www.evolutionep.com or contact Chuck Herschella at 610-329-8288. Evolution Energy Partners, energy solutions to improve your bottom line.
Hey, welcome back this week in pro football as we wrap it up week number 11, presented by Kennedy Ford, and I'm very pleased to have this gentleman on for the first time this season, the Philadelphia Inquirer columnist and the author of The Rise, a great book about Kobe Bryant. That would be Mike Sielski. Michael, how you doing?
I'm great, Pat. Thanks for having me on.
It's great to have you on, Michael. I remember we had you on years ago when the show was radio, but now you're a big star, and finally worked it out with your agent. It took a long time, but I'm very
you have a low standard for stardom.
Oh, well, now you've stepped it up. Now,
I'm trying, man. I'm trying.
Your career is about to rocket now that you're on this program. But thanks very much for taking the time. I want everybody has to give Mike a follow at Mike Sielski on X. He's one of the bravest men on X because invariably, whatever column you write results in about half the people just wanting to destroy you and the other half lauding you. But you're there for every blow. And I mean, do you enjoy that back and forth on X?
I do. I vacillate between ignoring it and trying not to pay it any mind and just having fun with it. So there are times where I probably should not post and hold my tongue or my Twitter finger, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
But I do think I will say this, Pat. I do think it's important in today's age of media that if you're gonna write, if you're gonna cover a team, if you're gonna comment on sports, particularly in a market like Philadelphia, you have to be able to take it as well as you dish it out. So that's part of the reason I'm on there too, and that's part of the reason I go back and forth with readers.
I think you're right. I think you're certainly right about that. And then I thought you had a very clever comment today when this Clarissa Thompson thing dropped, which was incredible that she made that admission. I don't know what in the hell prompted her to say that on that podcast. For those of you who don't know, Clarissa Thompson is one of those ubiquitous NFL sideline reporters who tells you items of absolute no import whatsoever. And she admitted as much that she actually made some of them up. And you came up with, of course, a great comment that, of course, it's about time, more or less, that this came out because Jalen Hurts doesn't even actually exist.
Yeah. I mean, I really couldn't believe this, Pat. And it's a disservice to, first of all, it's a disservice to the sideline reporters who actually do their jobs well, and have done the job well over time, like Pam Oliver and Andrea Kramer, Armin Kate, and people like that.
Right.
And it just cuts into the credibility of all of us in the media. We've spent so much time here trying to defend our credibility and try to argue, hey, we're trying to be right. And often when we mess up, it's just because we made a mistake. And then you have somebody saying, oh, no, I'm purposefully making stuff up when I report it. I don't care how insignificant it is. It's so stupid and so damaging.
Yeah, it is. I agree. But very surprising, too. Let me stay with this passion issue and talking about the kind of feedback you get, Mike. Would you say that Eagle fans, and remember, we've just had a tremendous run by the Phillies now, right through October, and a very disappointing finish for that team. But are Eagle fans the most passionate in terms of the four sports here in Philadelphia?
That's a really interesting question, Pat. I think in general they are. And I think some of that has to do with the dynamic of the Philadelphia market, that football is just intrinsic to this area. It's kind of a guttural thing. I've always thought that when the Eagles are going well, it on a Monday after they've won. The demeanor of people in the city and around the city is just different. Having said that, I think the Phillies' runs over the last couple of years have reminded people of how amazing a baseball town this can be. I think the fan bases of those two franchises are a little bit different. There's a lot of overlap, obviously, but I think you do get more grandmothers and people who are a little more toned down, I'd say, watching and following the Phillies on a day-to-day basis than you do the Eagles. And I think the other thing that we're leaving out is, the Flyers have been so bad for so long that we do forget that when they're good, or at least when they were good,
right,
they didn't have a very big fan base, but man, it was as passionate as any sport in any city, anywhere.
I agree. It was the most loyal fan base. Remember, everybody used to joke, is it 17,000 strong? Is that the Flyers fan base, right?
Right.
But boy, you're right. It was unequivocally loyal. But the Eagles fan base, it's funny. I wonder if this current fan base isn't a little spoiled because this team wasn't always as good. But it is. I always admire you for the way when you post these columns, and if they're not, for instance, I'll give you a for instance, Mike. I think wasn't it you who posed the question to Jalen Hurts about his knee?
Yes.
Okay. Why don't you describe that just a little bit and what Hurts' reaction was, and then my question to you is, why are the Eagles being so incredibly secretive or coy about the extent of this injury?
All right. Well, I asked him the question because anytime the starting quarterback of a Super Bowl contender is hurt in any way, it is worth asking about. It is something people want to know about. And I'm also familiar with the fact, and this kind of answers your question, Pat, that I think the Eagles are very cognizant, Nick Sirianni in particular, very cognizant about what they say about Jalen Hurts' injuries, because it's important to Hurts to be seen as almost like a superhero. Like he will play through anything. Nothing can keep him off the field. And even if he is banged up, he's going to play through it and play great through it. And I think it's important to him to maintain that image. And I think in turn, it's important to the Eagles to help him maintain that image. So they don't want to go in there saying, oh, well, yeah, he's really hurting right now, and we don't know how he's doing. Or, no. You know, as Nick Sirianni said last year, Jalen Hurts heals faster than everybody else, and he runs faster than you, and he could beat you in one-on-one and all of these things. So that's, I think, at the heart of this. It's not so much that the injury is way more serious than they're letting on. It's more that they want to keep this image of Hurts going. Now, we should point out that today he said apparently his knee is feeling much better, and you know, that bodes well for the Eagles if it's true. I guess we'll see Monday night.
All right. It just always struck me that the league is, in the past, has been very, very serious about disclosing injuries. There's really not much leeway. Plus, the league's now marriage to gambling would be such that you really can't hide this kind of thing. And yet the Eagles seem to be singular in their obsession with masking what is clearly an ongoing injury with Hurts. But it's funny, when you ask that question of him, he literally declared the press conference over, right?
Well, no, I was going to ask the last question anyway. The PR rep on hand had pointed to me as, you know, you get one more question. This is going to be the last one. And if I had asked him, you know, why is the sky blue? He still would have walked off the stage. He didn't answer the question because he doesn't want to answer the question.
Okay. All right, well, let's look at this game now, Michael. The Eagles and the Chiefs. Just give me your take on it. Is this? I was talking with Sean Green, who's my wagering guy on the show, and we kind of agreed this is not a make or break game for Kansas City. It's not even a conference game for them. They're going to win that division. How do you see this game for the Eagles? How important is this game in the midst of this 6-game gauntlet to the Eagles?
I think, let me put it this way, Pat. I baked into my expectations for the Eagles this season that they would lose this game. I thought that the hangover from losing the Super Bowl and the natural attrition after such a long season the year before, they could be as good as they were, and a stronger schedule on the whole. I thought they could be as good as they were last season and still have a worse record. So I kind of thought from the jump that this would be a difficult test for them. And I still think it's a difficult test for them. And I think, look, beating the Cowboys last week really helped them. It gave them some leeway that if they had lost that game, they would not have had. So can they lose this game and still win the division? Yeah, they can. Can they lose this game and still get home field advantage in the playoffs? Yeah, they can. But the road gets a whole lot harder. I'm not telling you anything you don't already know. And I'm not real optimistic heading into this game. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but you know, I don't have a great feeling about it.
All right. I think Philadelphia is going to win it. I think they are better than Kansas City. I think they'd be more motivated, but I think it should be a heck of a game. Just one last comment I wanted to wrangle from you, Michael, is about the NFL as a whole. And the fact I was saying earlier in the show that the league manages to have such fantastic finishes every week. Even when the first 58 minutes of the game appears to be terrible, they rescue it with these dramatic, like the Monday night game. They rescue it with these absolutely dramatic and very human finishes when players make such incredible mistakes. Is this a league, Mike, that just simply can't help but print money?
Nowadays, yeah. I think scarcity matters. I think the NFL is in this sweet spot of all the leagues. It's not just that it's football, and it's not just that it's once a week, so every game matters, right? Even if your team is out of it, you want to watch your team play. Right. And that's what separates it from, let's say, the NBA, okay? Where the NBA wants to capitalize on and market itself on the scuttlebutt and the trade rumors and the personality conflicts and all of those things. But it has the counterbalance, and it's actually trying to fix this, where the regular season games don't seem to mean a whole lot to people, including the players themselves.
Right, and that's why they're sitting out half a dozen games a year. Remember, what do they call it?
Well, that's why they created this in-season tournament to try to goose players' interest in regular season games. The NFL doesn't have that issue. Every game to every team matters so much because there's only 17 of them in the regular season.
Right.
So you can have the discussion about the personality conflicts and the gossip and the scuttlebutt, and you can have people on television. And I think this is an undersold aspect of its popularity. When people are watching the NFL on a Sunday or a Monday or a Thursday night, they don't really know what's happening in any given play as they're watching it live. The fact that you have all these places where people can go during the week to find out why that pass play worked and why that receiver was open, or why the pass rush got home, or the blocking that the Eagles execute on a particular run play. People go gaga over that stuff in a way that they don't, or maybe even can't, in basketball or hockey in particular. So the NFL has a lot going for it nowadays. And to your question, it can just print money.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, one of the things that you just said in that answer too is true. And that fans, the games are only played once a week, and fans watch whether their team's any good or not. And it brings up all this talk of tanking. Thankfully, it doesn't have to happen now in Philadelphia. But other teams, you want to tank for Caleb Williams. I don't believe anybody turns on an NFL game on a Sunday in the hopes that their team is going to get blown out so that they can accumulate losses and come up with a high draft pick in April. I just don't believe it. I think the players certainly never approach a game with the thought of losing it. Why would they possibly do that? I think the whole tanking thing is a mirage. I don't think anybody actually does it.
Yeah, the Browns tried it a couple of years ago, but the idea of tanking from a front office standpoint is really difficult because you can get guys hurt if you don't put a competent team on the field. Right. And you're 100% right about the players themselves. I remember back in 2020, I was talking with Jason Kelsey about why the Eagles were sitting Travis Fulgham and playing Alshon Jeffrey in a season that was totally lost, right? It was the COVID season. They were 4-13-1. They were terrible. 4-11-1, whatever their record was. They were terrible, and they weren't going anywhere. And I talked to Jason about, why aren't you seeing what the young guy can do, even if he's struggling? And his immediate answer was, because we're here to win. And every team is about winning in the NFL. Yeah. And we're going to play the guys who are better every single week.
There you go. That's funny. It's heartening even, Michael, to hear that. And I mentioned to Sean Green in the prior segment how it's so unfortunate. A team like Carolina, they're going to play this kid at quarterback from Ohio State, whether he's any good or not. And is he the one from Ohio State? And now I'm not sure.
Bryce Young, you mean, from from Alabama.
Alabama. Thank you. And the fact he's clearly inferior to Andy Dalton right now, I think it's a shame for those other Carolina players, but that's the way of it now. Everybody's got to play the rookie quarterback, but Carolina really suffering right now. But I appreciate the point. I think it's right, and that's a great quote from Jason Kelsey. But all right, Michael Sielski, I want to thank you very much for joining me here. It was great talking with you. I hope you come back. And I know
anytime, Pat. Thanks.
Look forward to your column Tuesday. I know you'll probably devote the whole column to Taylor Swift and whether she's wearing an Eagles jersey or a Chiefs jersey or whatever. Boy, the NFL's ridden that wave too, haven't they? Really?
But Pat, most sports columnists would be offended by what you just said, but I'm just going to shake it off.
Well done,
all
Mike.
Right.
Thanks very much for joining me. Look forward to
thanks, Pat.
Again. All right. All right, that was great. Mike Sielski joining me from the Philadelphia Inquirer. Please check him out every day in the Inquirer and also on X at Mike Sielski. All right, that'll do it for week number 11 here this week in pro football. I think Philadelphia wins. I think they win the Monday night game. Should be a really good game. Mahomes is the best, but I think the Eagles are a superior team to Kansas City. I think they have a huge edge at wide receiver. I think they have an edge at defensive line. And the D line of the Eagles is the one that has to mask these shortcomings the Eagles have in the secondary. We'll see if they can pull it off. Thank you very much to Xander Kraus for producing. Thank you all for watching. Look forward to coming back to you next week. Wednesday night, we'll be here, 6 p.m. Wednesday night with a very Thanksgiving edition of This Week in Pro Football presented by Kennedy Ford.